Hey, Colleen, it's very nice to have you here today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Christine. I'm excited to chat today.
I'm excited too, and I'm honored you're chatting with me today. I was trying to think back how long we've known each other. I think it's been close to 20 years when we first crossed
Yep.
paths, and which is unbelievable to me. But also, you've accomplished so much in that time. Why I was so excited to have you on and have a conversation. You are by far one of the most accomplished and successful product leaders in the space today. So I'd
Thank you.
love to talk with you about your experience in the product world. Most recently, working as the vice president at Toast. And many of my audience members will know of Toast, the restaurant industry SaaS platform. And
Mhm.
I'd love, Colleen, to delve into your experience there. A lot of my audience also comes to this program. It's a lot of women in tech will come on to hear from other industry leaders about their lessons learned along the way. So I know you're also a big advocate for
I am.
diversity and equity in tech, so I'd love to delve into that as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I don't take compliments well, but I appreciate them.
They're well deserved. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
so Colleen, just to start, this is probably the most challenging question I'll ask because I'm asking you to take your career, which has spanned 20 years, and tell us a little bit about your story, the story of your life in a couple of minutes. Can you share a little bit?
Yeah, I love these types of talks because it makes you stop and reflect when everyone's working so hard every day and so busy. It makes you just take a step back and look at it in a little different lens.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been quite a journey in product. So I spent 7.5 years as VP of product at Toast, which you mentioned. And for people that don't know Toast, I always say if a server's come over to your table and taken your order with a device, that's probably Toast. Or if you've ordered online at one of your favorite restaurants. Hopefully that's Toast. But I oversaw product development for all the technology being used in restaurants today. So the point of sale, their kitchen display, the front of house, the back of house technology, the self service kiosk, and the handheld. So the whole suite of things in the restaurant. I joined there in Series B. So I was the first product leader hired by the founding team. I knew Steve Fredette a little bit when he worked at Endeca and I was at uPromise and I was a client of Endeca's and Steve and I got to be friendly over there and build an app together at uPromise. And so when he told me what they were up to at Toast way back in the day, I got really excited about the mission and the work they were doing to try to help SMBs grow. So I helped the company grow from about 10 million to over a billion in revenue when I left about a year ago. Prior to Toast, I've worked in product roles in big companies like Staples, where they had a mobile offshoot called the Velocity Labs. I got to build mobile apps for their $6 billion Staples Advantage business. So that was really fun to do a smaller mobile project for a company of that size and scale. And learned a lot about how to influence and lead a company that big and has been around for that long at Staples. Prior to that, I was at a smaller company called uPromise that ended up getting acquired by Sally Mae. And I built their online commerce platform, launching 800 partners there and helping millions of members save for college. So that was a really fun company to work in with a great mission. And then this past year, I got to take a year off, do some traveling. I bought a house in Maine. I helped my son get off to college in Denver, go through that whole college process, which is very daunting. And now I'm working on consulting and advisory roles with a
Hmm.
couple of startups and really focusing on my next chapter and having a little more balance than maybe in the prior roles.
Thank you, Colleen. There's so much. You may see me looking down. I'm feverishly taking notes, and there's so much where we could delve into. I did want to start just to give a frame for me with your career and with all of your accomplishments and being in a very intense industry. I'd
Mhm.
love to hear from you. You have had some time in this year off, which hasn't really been off, I know,
Mhm.
but when you think about your career and what you've learned along the way, have you had a chance to reflect and think about if you could go back and talk to yourself as you were starting out in the product world? I'd love to hear a little bit about what would you tell yourself? What have been some of your biggest lessons learned?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, you have to think back from
Yeah.
when you started out. When I started out in product, it wasn't even called product. So I don't want to date myself, but it was called project management or business analysis. And so my first role was at Harvard Business Publishing. And it was back in the day where they were launching a new website. They were trying to get professors to put their case studies online, get the
Mhm.
Harvard Business Review online. I just raise my hand for everything. I give advice to my son and his friends to try lots of things and see what you enjoy and find out what you're good at. I think Mark Cuban says this a lot. You're telling young people to find your passion, but a lot of kids coming out of college don't know what their passion is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that puts a lot of stress on them to say, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I'm like, well, try a lot of things and you're going to find out what you're good at and what you like. And
Mhm.
product and UX have so many different disciplines as part of them, right? It's product strategy, there's technical specifications, working with customers. And so I think finding out what you really enjoy and what you're good at, what people are giving you feedback on, wow, this is great. This is really helpful. I'd love to work with you more on that, right? That I think has stayed with me throughout my career where if there's a new project and it's something I don't know about, I'll raise my hand and say, I don't have a lot of background in this, but I'm happy to help. Or
Mhm.
if I have bandwidth or someone on my team has bandwidth, I think would be a good learning opportunity for them. I might point them in that direction. So that's just something it's simple, but I think people can get super busy in their day to day and may block out some of the noise of other things going around them. But just be curious and keep trying and raising your hand for things. I think was the first thing that was top of mind.
Can I ask you about that? Thank you, Colleen. I'm wondering when you've raised your hand and tried things out,
Mhm.
I do hear with product managers, UXers who are still early in their career, a
Mhm.
resistance to trying things where they don't know where it will end up necessarily. And I'm
Mm,
curious, do you have any stories first when you were thinking about starting out your career when it wasn't even called product?
mhm.
Things you learned along the way. I've been asking leaders like you, did you identify some of your zones of genius? What were those early on? And just as importantly, was there something that you learned that it may have felt like a failure, but it helped you learn this isn't the direction I'd like to go in? Did you have some lessons learned in that direction as well?
Yeah, I think when you're trying different things, you learn what's giving you energy and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
I think early days of budget spreadsheets for months, and I was like, this is really draining to me. But when I was going to talk to the professors at Harvard and trying to convince them to put their intellectual property online and how do we attack this, there was a lot of reticence at the time, right? Because nobody had put these things online and there was digital rights management, all this kind of crazy technology at the time where you would lock a case study to a computer. I really got energized from those conversations with professors is like, why our innovation is going to help you and your students. And so I really got energized by that. And I think that kind of carried into my work of working with customers and being very customer focused. Like as a product leader, Steve actually had said to me, I think your superpowers are product, people, and process. And I think that is true of my career where I like to focus, right? On the product side, getting my hands really dirty and hands on with the PMs, building and designing, getting in front of customers, getting feedback, working with the teams to find out where people mesh with each other, where their superpowers, thinking about maybe someone's struggling in a product role, but they could be great in product marketing, or maybe someone's struggling in a customer facing role because they're more technical and want to think about 3-year architecture down the line. So I think that combination of people and product and the process part, how do you get there? How do you get more efficient? How do you do things better? Has been a focus of my career, but again, learning what I didn't like along the way and
Yeah.
volunteering for a lot of things, but then honing in on, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm getting great feedback about. Getting it back from your team about how helpful you've been, like for them in their career. And so that really became the place that I focused after my, first or second role.
Thank you. Thank you, Colleen. And I had interrupted hearing about your lessons learned. It was just fascinating to me hearing how you were putting yourself out there a lot because I do hear hesitation from more junior level people. What else has come up that you've really been reflecting on in terms of lessons learned?
I think the other thing we talked about a little bit last time we chatted, I think was about being a really good storyteller. And this is something I worked with the team a lot. So, as a product owner, a product manager, you know everything about your product, right? You're the master of that, the ins and outs and all the features and why you should add XYZ or what customers are saying. But if you're pitching to a manager or the CEO or a venture capital, like whatever
Yeah.
stage you're in, I think that simplifying your story about this is what it's about, this is why it's important, this is the outcome I'm trying to drive. Here's the data to back it up, right? A lot of people will come in with a gut feeling or just talk to this customer and we're going to go ahead and build that. But I want the longer term story, like what this could
Yeah.
mean in the bigger sense of the product, and then the data to back that up. And I think that skill goes a long way. Matt Kaplan, who I worked for a bit at Toast, is a great storyteller, and he always uses Disney stories as references, which people give him the business about. But you remember them. You really do remember the story and the animation and the characters and the why behind the story and pitching that. So I think I wish I had learned that a little bit earlier days and even like practicing public speaking and things like that. I was on the stage at the Heinz Convention Center one year in front of like thousands of people. And I'm slightly introverted by nature. And so, wow, I wish I had worked on this skill a little bit more when I was younger. Those are a couple of things that kind of came up when I reflected.
Heinz Center. Were you talking about Moana?
It was Ratatouille. Everybody can cook, and all kinds of Disney references. But then we also went into a lot of animation and the future of the restaurant, and kind of
Mhm.
painting that picture of what that looks like. And once you show that to the CEO and the CTO, and like how complex a restaurant has become, if you
Mhm.
think about it, you go into a coffee shop. They have a point of sale, they're doing orders, they're doing payments, they're issuing gift cards, they have a loyalty program. You can order online. They might do catering in advance, right? So restaurant technology has become so complex, and that's
Mhm.
why vertical SaaS and a company like Toast, which started with one module and now has, I think, 24 different modules, could be a lot to tell that story of how these things should work together,
Absolutely.
why they're important, why we need to invest in these different areas to have the best all-in-one platform out there.
Mhm.
And so I think just being able to simplify that and story tell that to the leadership team was extremely helpful
Yeah,
at the time.
yeah. Let's talk about Toast a little bit. You
Okay.
touched upon you arrived there now, was it about 9 years ago? You were there for 7.5 years?
I guess so back then. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you touched upon it in passing, but going from 20 million ARR to 1 billion plus,
Hmm.
talk about a story to tell. I'm curious, when you were first coming in, Toast is one of the rocket ships people talk about now in the industry. To what degree did the trajectory of Toast align with what you were imagining when you came in 9 years ago?
Yeah, rocket ship for sure. I think when you go into a startup, you never know, right? You never
Yeah.
know if they're going to be successful. You see the stats and the data on failure. But I think what got me was the mission and the pivot they did early days, right? So the co-founders, and they had all worked at Endeca together and
Mm-hmm.
were spinning off a new company and knew they wanted to work with the restaurant industry. And Aman, who's the CEO now, was saying how he hated to wait for the check, right? He
Mm-hmm.
really didn't like he's impatient and didn't want to wait for the check. And he thought that might have been the biggest problem that restaurants were facing at the time. And then when they started talking to a lot of customers and spending time in coffee shops, it was clear they needed a system that could just do the foundational things, that could process orders without losing them, that could have secure payments, that could take the 10 or 12 different vendors they were working with and consolidate it into one platform so they could have a complete picture of their business, right? That they could see their data across systems, they could see the reporting, how they're doing in different channels, right? How is DoorDash doing versus in store? How is our delivery business doing versus pay? All of it in one place. And so that really became the focus area of how do we give these restaurants this like mission critical system to help them become more efficient. And in the early days, it was working on the point of sale, which was the anchor product and the core product. But then as you spend time with customers and watching them, and great UX researchers and UX folks do this all the time. The point of sale is awesome, but like, why is servers like waiting in line to put an order into the point of sale when they're really busy? Maybe they should have another point of sale, but what if they had a device that they could just do it at the table? Couldn't that save them an incredible amount of time and energy? Maybe it's more accurate because they take it at the time of order and don't have to remember all your crazy modifications before they
Hmm.
type it in there, and make the restaurant more efficient with their table turn times and things like that. So I think the moving from one or two core modules to then 24 became this study in how customers operate. And
Yeah.
even at the sub vertical level, I think one thing that a lot of people on the outside might not notice is what a fine dining restaurant needs is very different than a cafe, and is very different than a burrito shop or a quick service.
Yeah.
The features really have to be tailored to that specific sub vertical of restaurant. And
Mm-hmm.
so the team built out this growth framework to really deeply understand how we were doing in the funnel on those specific sub verticals, how we were converting those leads, how the product was working for them, or their features that were missing, or the things that they wish it could do better for that specific type of vertical. And then how do we help these SMBs grow, right? In terms of going through terrible times like COVID, and just having so many challenges as an SMB restaurant with labor and hiring. That became top of mind as well. Like, we want them to operate successfully, but we also want to be the partner that really helps them grow and thrive as a business.
Yeah, Colleen, thank you. There's so much I want to dig into here because we've had a chance to talk a couple of times about your
Mhm.
experience, but not in depth. As a topic near and dear to my heart is how customer research and customer insights comes into play. The
Mhm.
story of Toast is fascinating to me, where you mentioned the founders were initially in coffee shops, observing the customer challenges, problems, seeing how the restaurant operates. Has the approach of ethnography, staying in the shops, you mentioned the experience of fine dining is very different than the coffee shop experience.
Mhm.
Is this something that stayed foundational to the culture of Toast? Are folks still going out to the restaurants and seeing how the restaurants are operating? Like, how does that work? And is it the product managers or UXers? Can you share a little bit about the process around research?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun part of the job, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can take the team out for drinks, you can have
Yeah.
a coffee, you can chat with people. Absolutely, still very fundamental to the DNA.
Mhm.
And even as they've expanded internationally, like, those trends are different. Those customer needs are different. Their products in market are different, right? And so
Mhm.
you almost have to start over when you're launching in the UK or Ireland to understand, oh, they don't really do tabs in Ireland. They're paying for their
Interesting.
Guinness as they go. And loyalty programs are a little different here. As they continue to expand geos, absolutely, like, customer research and insights become incredibly helpful and paramount to the product you're designing. I think that's a big part of their success, is that they really put customers first. They continue to work with customers in customer advisory boards, or they have an SMB one, they have an enterprise one. Those customers are coming into the office quarterly and talking to the PMs and the designers. And they have a philosophy of a triad, which is an engineering lead, a design lead, and a product lead in a team. And so it really makes the most sense for all of those three, if time allows it, to be connected to customers, because then you don't have to convince your engineering person why that roadmap item is more important than something they want to do for quality or scale, which is always a delicate balance. But I love having engineers involved in those conversations
Mhm.
too, because they just don't get enough of that day-to-day like customer feedback. And now, of course, there's so many great tools that allow you to get feedback through like user testing. But I think the in-person and building those relationships is important too. And customers want to have a relationship with your software provider. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people moved away from some of the legacy providers because they couldn't get support. And even though you may be coming in saying, I want this to validate or invalidate a hypothesis I have, they love knowing, okay, now I can text Colleen, or now I can text Christine about a question I have or a problem I have. I haven't been there a year and a half. I'm still getting texts.
I wonder now when you walk into restaurants, is everyone like, "Hey, Colleen"?
There's a
Everyone
joke.
knows you so well.
There was a joke in my family that like you had to decide whether you talked about toast or not. Like it quickly became a work dinner and you're hopping behind the bar and configuring something, or you can just be incognito. So don't wear your swag if you don't want to be engaged in an hour-long
Can
conversation.
I ask you back to you were sharing, Colleen, like going to 1 billion ARR, and you were talking about starting with just one vertical, point of sale. Now, what is Toast at in terms of verticals and mergers and acquisitions?
Yeah, I think in terms of different software modules,
Yeah.
you can buy, I think I counted about 24 the other day, but it could be more at this point, which again seems like a lot. But if you, back to what we were talking about earlier, think about all those different needs of how to be competitive in that space. They really do need a payroll to pay their employees and to schedule their employees, and they need to do inventory and learn about their food costs. So all these things are coming together as this all-in-one platform to really help restaurants run all aspects of their business. And I think vertical SaaS in general, such a hot topic in our
Mm-hmm.
space and our industry. And a lot of companies are following that model, starting with one or two core products and then trying to rapidly expand into 10 or 12
Yeah.
and getting lots of pressure from the street to increase ARR per user, per
Mm-hmm.
customer very quickly. And so I think that's become, chose to become a playbook for vertical SaaS with embedded
Mm-hmm.
payments that a lot of companies are trying to follow. And it can be really challenging, right? Because I think Toast could take its time a little bit in the early days to make sure there's product market fit, to make sure there are
Yeah.
really happy customers in product one, two, and three before expanding. Now, with the world of AI and the pressure to go faster and faster, I think that's getting increasingly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the vertical SaaS companies I'm talking to are trying to launch like 6 or 8 or 10 products, and a lot of them are MVPs, like minimally viable products, very slimmed down features. And is that enough for a customer to love that, to tell another friend about it? Or are we going a little too fast to try to expand without getting the core products? And so I think that's a concern I'm seeing, but it's also an opportunity, right? We talked a little bit about being connectors, right? Being
Mm-hmm.
connectors of experiences. And that's something I'm super passionate about, where a lot of companies that have been acquiring to try to get that vertical platform, like Shift4, I was talking to recently, they've acquired a POS, a German POS, a gift card company, right? They're trying to put that all together in a meaningful way to have a best in class platform.
Mm-hmm.
It's really challenging. You're bringing in talent from these different groups. You're trying to figure out who should do what, how to put it together in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe this role of a connector across the different verticals is becoming more and more important, with AI being able to help PMs and UX go faster to maybe create a feature or create a specific piece of that sub vertical. How are customers really experiencing your product across? What are the key control points in product one that will make it easier to set up product two, or discover product two, or try product two, right? And that's, I think, where people like you and I can be really helpful to vertical SaaS companies in connecting the experiences and connecting the technology in a meaningful way.
Absolutely. When I heard you say 24, 20 plus software modules, my initial reaction was, wow, that could be messy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wonder, as you said, there's a real opportunity to be connectors across those modules. I'm curious, do you have, when organizations are coming to you and they've gone through mergers and acquisition, they do have these various verticals, there's a bit of a mess. Where do you recommend they start to connect the dots there? Is there a playbook you're following? What did you learn from the Toast experience that you're now sharing with others to make sense of that mess holistically?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that the teams need to be talking to each other. So I think there's
Mm-hmm.
a propensity for M&A to silo those teams off so they don't disturb the core like development or the core roadmap that's happening.
Yeah.
I actually think that's misguided a bit because the team coming in doesn't necessarily know your core product, right? They know of
Mm-hmm.
it. seen a demo, maybe they've clicked around on your website and they've seen the pitch, but they don't know the ins and outs of the platform. If you acquire a payroll company, Toast POS already has all this employee data, right? It already knows the servers, it already knows, it has PIN numbers and login information, contact information, right? Don't ask for that in the payroll product because we already have all that's already set up and
Yeah.
easily be imported with one click to try a payroll product or to upsell a payroll product and not have this huge onboarding process. And so I think there's an educational component that the teams need to talk to each other and understand what are the control points that we have in the core systems that can really be leveraged in order to make that next product module successful. So even starting a mapping exercise of that day one and having the teams connected, I think is the most important thing.
I mentioned, Colleen, when I invited you to speak with me that I wanted to hear a lot about your experience in the product world. But one thing I'm hoping to do with these conversations is give leaders like you, powerhouse women, an opportunity to share a little bit more about their whole lives and their whole
Mhm.
selves and what's going on. You mentioned you chose to leave Toast about a year ago, and you've been very, very busy, finding a college for your son. Your son's
Yeah.
gone off. Can you share a little bit about the decision making involved? You helped build Toast from the ground up and you decided to move forward. Can you share a little bit about the decision-making process there and why
Yeah.
you decided to move on?
Yeah, it was hard if you've been in a company
Hmm.
for that long. Your team is your family. I
Hmm.
talk to my team almost every day.
Yeah.
One member of my team or another. Those have become just very important relationships. But I think for me, it was I got to a place where I felt like I could accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. They're a public company now. There's lots of different scrutiny there. There's lots of change on the leadership side as well and all good stuff for the growth stage that they're in. But for me, I really just needed a little bit of a break and a step back after going a million miles a minute for most of my career. That I had the opportunity to do that and just to take a little break and for my mental health
Yeah.
and see what's next and try to find a role that encompasses a lot of those same things that I know I'm great at that I did at Toast and find a team that I can embed with, but also have time to myself. And I'm getting more involved in the community in Maine, which is really fun. There's like a startup culture happening with the Northeastern Rue Institute in Portland. And so getting back to my roots a little bit with smaller companies and startups and getting back in the trenches there. That's what I'm excited about for my next
Mhm.
step.
I haven't shared this with you before, but as a fellow mom and also
Yes.
being in the product world for many years, I so am inspired by the moms who manage to balance parenthood, but also
Mm-hmm.
stay embedded in organizations during those stages. So when I had my kiddo, I made the choice to leave in-house roles and work as
Mm-hmm.
a consultant because I just could not figure out how parents make it work. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, when I hear about Toast, I recently talked with Susan Rice, who was leading
Yes.
up UX,
We
your
shared a
former
pod for
colleague.
a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she said, there's high velocity companies who are operating millions of miles an hour, and there's Toast,
Mm-hmm.
where the level of velocity and the level of work and the intensity was at a level she had never seen before. And
Mm-hmm.
you were balancing that environment, building up a huge organization and parenthood. And I'm curious how you did it. Like, how did you find that balance, or did you find a
Yep.
balance? Can you speak to that a little bit?
It's such a tough balance. And
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing I got good at was protecting my time and protecting my calendar is my time and my most important things. And like
Mm-hmm.
I need to get done this week. Saying no to things
Yeah.
really hard. I think women are like inherently people pleasers and will want to say yes to things that come up. I think you really have to think of yourself as like your own product, right?
Yeah.
What do I need? How do I need to get my best NPS score or customer satisfaction? What's working well, what's not working well for me? Just taking that time to think about that. And so I think I got really good about managing my calendar, um, saying no to certain things that may have come up and may have helped my career. But or not now. Like I can't take on another thing right now, but I'm happy to circle back in 3 or 4 months if something else drops off my plate. Also, something I would do with my team, I think when a company is that busy, you can lose sight of all the things they're managing, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe they're still working with 3 or 4 customers that they emailed 3 months ago that I don't even know about. Show me in our one-on-ones, like what are your top 10 things this week? And it helps your manager remember all the things you're working on and then be like, oh, maybe those aren't as important anymore. Or
Hmm.
if my direct report is coming and saying, I feel super overwhelmed, like, how can I'll take those two off your plate?
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
I have bandwidth, having that rapport with your team where you can really have that open communication and have a document or something just to keep going back to, I think is really helpful. And it's something I used to do with my manager as well. Like, I would just be like, just as a reminder, I'm working on these like 10 or 12 different things. Most of the time, there's 10 or 12 more. But
Good job, Colleen.
but I think for me and for coaching women on my team and women who I might know just had a baby or just coming back from maternity leave, I was super cognizant of easing them back into that, how I could help. And if
Mhm.
my plate's not full, then I'm going to help someone else. And I think vice versa. If I'm down or I'm out sick, like my team's going to come and step up and help me however I can. So I think building that culture was really important to me as well.
Mhm. I had wondered about that, supporting and guiding women within your organizations and building that culture. I know as one of the female leaders at Toast, this was something that was near and dear to your heart. And I'm curious, there's a lot of talk these days, which I wasn't expecting, about DEI initiatives when we
Yeah,
first talked about having you on. I didn't realize what a timely topic it
right.
would be, Colleen.
Yeah.
Can I hear? I know at Toast, you were actively involved in being an advocate for diversity inclusion initiatives. Can I get your take a little bit first? What type of programs did you have at Toast? What were you advocating for? And what is your take on the discourse right now about DEI in the workplace?
I was the first woman hired in the R&D team at
Hmm.
Toast. And I think even just at the beginning, looking around and being like, wow, there's not a lot of women on this team. Like, how can I
Hmm.
start rounding out the team and bringing in those perspectives so that it's not just a lot of people who work together thinking the same way? I think one of the great things about Toast is always people challenging each other's assumptions. And it's important to have different perspectives. And so, how do we start building a team that can really have the different perspectives? Like day one, let's hire some kick-ass women onto the team.
Yeah.
A lot of them are still there. And I think I've hired over 50 product directors, designers, or product managers over my time there. So that was the first thing. And I think the second, even if there were formal programs for DEI, but when you don't have formal programs, I would always have conversations with my managers about when you said this, here's what the Slack thread said. Here's what the
Yeah.
said, you know, echoing back maybe how different people are feeling about how leaders are communicating. I think I became that person for a lot of leaders that they look to me to bridge that gap. And that could be a hard role to fill. You don't want to be the person that's criticizing, but it's really trying to help them grow and be better leaders. And so when you said this, the team felt this way, or this
Hmm.
person on the team felt this way, and they would never be able to tell you that because they're a PM and you're a
Hmm.
executive all the way up there. So I think being the bridge to that feedback was super helpful and really made it top of mind for them. Like I sat in rooms with folks where there's like performance reviews and how you review a man being a little different than a woman.
Hmm.
I had a leader once say, she's not very bubbly. This woman is like a kick-ass like analyst who's crunching data all day and she's a little on the introverted side and look at her work product and these are her goals and here's how she surpassed them. And it's like bubbly is
Yeah. Yeah.
to be rating people on. It's not anything that is in our playbook for analysis. And so let's really think about the traits. Would you ever say that about a guy? Even if in the lack of formal DEI, how do you have those truth tellers on your team
Yeah.
that can speak up and that have good relationships with the executive team? That they'll feel protected as well to have those conversations. They'll feel safe and protected and that the leaders will take that in and try to get better. And I think that's all you want is thank you for that feedback. I'm going to try to be better about that. I'm going to write this down. I'm going to circle back next time. And then they often would even check in and be like, was I better? That's a huge hallmark of a culture that's constantly trying to get better. And so I think given where DEI programs are headed and things being slashed left and right, that might be one of the most important things you can do in an informal way.
Yeah, I did want to go back to the diversity of perspectives for a second and talk a little bit about your approach to product strategy and product visioning, where this is a topic that I'm especially passionate about, where I've been sitting down with leaders like you to get an understanding of what their approach is to visioning. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I've learned over time looking at these product teams, and I'd be curious to get your perspective. Toast is seen as an innovator in the space, not
Mm-hmm.
just seen, is an innovator in the space in terms of how work is done, in terms of the problems you've solved in restaurants with your approach. What I've seen in my work is there's this notion that innovation sometimes comes from this lone genius saying, aha, I
Right.
know what direction we should go. That's not the story I'm hearing from leader after leader, that it's not just one aha moment from one person that drives direction. It's diversity of perspectives, bringing them together, hearing from many different pockets in the organization once you know
Mhm.
what the customer needs are and the business needs are, and coming to a vision and strategy. I'm curious, can you tell me a little bit about your approach to vision, product visioning, and strategy, and to what degree is it a team effort versus a sole genius? Can you share your perspective, Colleen?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't think it's a sole genius perspective. I think you can be the Jeff Bezos and say Amazon is going to sell everything in the world at some point, right? And
Yeah.
that's a bold vision that has stayed true for many years, but think about all everything under that vision that needs to take place. So like we talked about, I think in the early days of Toast, it was how do you help SMB restaurants grow?
Mm-hmm.
And then using those customer insights to understand what are their pain points, what are they looking for in a system, what is the old system not giving them. Let's look at their P&L. How
Yeah.
are they doing? What they're such low margin? How much are they spending on food? Understanding their business. And I think helping SMB restaurants grow then became okay, here are all the things we've heard, like a typical like UX thing. Here are all the things we heard, and where is it most, where's the critical pain point, where where should we start? And I think that became the platform for ordering payments. And then what could this look like? Understanding kind of what we talked about before, understanding that a competitive restaurant needs 24 different pieces of things to actually be a competitive restaurant and have happy guests and serve multiple channels. We aspire to be an all-in-one platform. We are here. We have two things.
Mm-hmm.
We aspire to have all of the things. We aspire to have the best ease of use. We aspire to have really happy guests who are using the product and really satisfied servers that are getting tipped well, right? And feel good about the product and refer the product to other people. So that was the guiding vision. And I think you want to have a 3 year strategy. You have your company strategy, you have your product strategy, and those need to work together. And then you have a bottom up approach with the product team and say, okay, if here's where we're going, how best do we think we can get there and in what timeline? And start dividing things up into very manageable chunks for your team. They don't have to worry about the thing 3 years down, but they have to know in their back of their heads that might be coming because they may design or develop something different knowing that that's coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think having the 3 year vision and strategy is very important for the teams to understand and how their daily work rolls up into that. But you
Mm-hmm.
also want to keep those teams very focused on, okay, you're building POS V1 and
Right.
here's the features that are involved in that. I think the companies I've seen do this the best, like your company strategy is aligned with your product strategy. Your product team is working towards that. And that can continue to change as the market changes, as you're getting more feedback from customers, more insights. That's not going to stay the same for 3 years, right?
Yep.
You would
Yep.
definitely be a genius if that stayed the same for 3 years, but that's going to continue to ebb and flow with what you're hearing in the market.
Yep, yep, thank you. I did want to ask you before we wrap up, Colleen, the role of AI in
Oh, yeah.
product development. I've been hearing many different implications and takes on the role of AI in the future for product work. Some people are saying, oh, this is our future. Every product manager really needs to be focused on upskilling in the AI space. And others saying it's going to be a mess. That the product leaders and UXers having a lot of AI integrated into products without knowing what the problem is. There's the
Mm,
take that there's a lot of that right now. I'm curious, where do you think AI is going forward and what will be the implications for the product world?
yeah, it could be a little bit of both for
Yeah,
sure. It's going to get
absolutely.
messy, but
Yeah.
I've been very excited with the products I've been tinkering around with
Mhm.
and what they can do from an efficiency perspective for product managers and designers. Like I'm working with a startup right now that just used Claude to create their wireframes and with a few prompts, and it looks pretty darn good. They knew exactly what they wanted. I tried a tool called Craftful, KRA, and I've been talking to their CPO. And it's a genius tool, like takes all the customer feedback from multiple sources like G2 or software advice or your social media platforms. It distills it down. It says, these are the most loved features. This is what customers don't like. This is what they wish they had. And when I think about how many hours or weeks or months to spend on that in the early days, that's incredibly helpful from an efficiency perspective. So I think PMs and designers should be using these tools to make them more efficient, like 10x product managers in a way.
Yeah.
Their role, I think, will change. Their role of communication will still be there, the storyteller role, the fundraiser, the why we need to build this next thing will be there, the connector, the working with customers, all I think will still be important parts of the PM role. But I think the tools will change and the PMs that are being more efficient will be using AI tools. And I think when it comes to SMB, some of these agents and things that are coming
Hmm.
out on the support side, I haven't had a ton of great luck with myself.
Yes.
However, one thing I've been tinkering with on the SMB side is I think with vertical SaaS and cut back to what we talked about before, these companies that are continuing to just build software module after software module,
Hmm.
something has gotten lost there, which is how you're helping these SMB businesses grow. And I
Hmm.
think that's where AI can really help. Like AI can look at your data and your reports and why do you need to go to page 20 to know that something's not selling,
Hmm.
or you can look at your bottom line and make recommendations on something very simple. Add photos to your online ordering website because the conversion rate will be 30% higher. People want to see the good nachos when ordering,
Yeah.
food
Mhm.
online. There's all these daily small recommendations. I think AI agents could really help with the SMB story and in restaurants and retail and across the board. When you talk to these businesses, a lot of them are not technically savvy and a lot of them are overwhelmed by all the technical choices they have to make. And so, how do you make those daily choices really easy for them?
Yep.
Um, so that's a little product I'm working on on the
Just a
side,
little product on the side.
little
Yes.
product on the side. But I'm really excited about. I just think the opportunity to point AI at your data and get things much quicker that you can action on as a customer or as a PM or a designer is massive. What I don't like is when we read these articles that like product management is dead, AI is taking over, we're going to fire the whole product team. I think
Hmm.
that is totally unfounded. And again, like the role is going to change. What they're focused on is going to change, and maybe they'll be more efficient and get things out a lot faster. But I think that's probably not a good direction to move in, to say that.
Yeah. Do you have time for one more
Yes.
question? Part of what I've been doing in a coaching consulting capacity is working with product and UXers who are trying to figure out what's next in their careers. Some of these folks are feeling a little lost in terms of the uncertainty, the market being as it is right now. And you've spoken to a couple of opportunities for product leaders and UX leaders to start potentially thinking about their role in different ways. Specifically,
Mhm.
you've mentioned so many companies now with many modules needing a much more holistic, best in class experience across verticals. For those UX leaders and product leaders who are trying to figure out what's next for their careers, do you have advice for them? Are there plays that you think would be the directions to go?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely one of them. I
Mhm.
think starting out, I is going to be totally different for a PM these days. So you do have to learn these AI tools. You have to learn the prompts. You have to
Yeah.
experiment. with these different tools and learn what's out there, that could bring you to the top of the pack and
Yeah.
for your resume over someone else's that you even understand this space. Like
Mm,
I see all the time like PM AI roles being posted.
mm.
So a lot of this is free. You could just start learning on your own time. You don't even have to have product experience just to use any of these tools. So I would say get in there. There's no code tools. You can become a developer. I just have a friend who built a startup prototype, no code prototype, who has no engineering background at all, no skill set. I think the opportunities there. Come in with a prototype you built if you're interviewing for a company.
Mm.
Come in with ideas, show what you've done with AI, and I think that will separate you from the pack there.
Absolutely. Colleen, thank you so much for,
Nice to
I
chat with
knew I
you.
would learn a lot and I did. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your story. I so appreciate
And
it.
yours. I love your work and so excited for your next chapter and your work with Lift Up as well. And happy to
Thank
help in any way I
you,
can.
Colleen. I think the next step will be I'll try to convince you to come talk to me again, speak to me.
Okay. I would
Thank
love
you
that.
so much.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.